Society of noises. Imagine a hazy afternoon in the 21st century. Amidst the endless sea of information, a debate breaks out online about education, economics, politics, or simply a perspective on life. Only a few minutes pass, the tone transforms. Reason gives way to insults, arguments turn into memes, and truth is drowned under a flood of sarcastic laughter. Socrates once said, "When the debate loses reason, the weak will use slander." 2,000 years have passed, that saying still echoes, as if written just for our era. We are living in a world where volume is mistaken for wisdom. The loudest speaker is considered the most knowledgeable. The person with the quickest comeback, the sharpest reply, is hailed as an icon of intellect. Meanwhile, the person who thinks slowly, considers carefully, is seen as weak, lacking courage, or worse, as having no opinion. Digital platforms become arenas for verbal warriors, where the fast replaces the right, the sensational replaces the genuine.
We think we are debating, but actually we are performing. Each word is no longer for understanding each other, but for defeating each other. But idiot here does not mean an ignorant person. The Greek origin of idiotes means a person detached from public life, a person who only cares about themselves without seeing the whole. And that is precisely the sickness of the era, a culture of empty confidence. People speak loudly for fear of being forgotten. People act certain because they cannot bear the fragility of doubt. People behave like experts, despite only skimming a few headlines. In that world, the truly knowledgeable become strangers. They do not want to argue, only to understand. Do not want to win, only to understand better. But in the age of the audience, the one who does not perform will disappear. We are living in an economy of expression, where "I am angry, I am right" gradually replaces "I understand, therefore I speak." Socrates might have smiled bitterly if he saw this, a new Athens, more crowded, louder, and of course, more confident than ever. Modern people do not seek truth, but seek the feeling of being right. They do not want to know the truth, but want to see themselves at the center of it. The ego becomes an endlessly expanding mirror, reflecting everything except truth itself. And then, a paradox appears. The less one knows, the more confident one becomes. The Dunning-Kruger effect is no longer just a psychological phenomenon, but a principle of society's operation. Someone who just watched a 3-minute video about the universe dares to claim science is wrong. One who reads a few lines about spirituality immediately proclaims themselves enlightened. But why are they listened to? Because we live in a system that rewards certainty, not correctness. The social media algorithm is a machine that cheers for blind faith. It does not ask, "Is this information true?" but only asks, "Is anyone outraged?" Outrage is the currency, and whoever manipulates emotions best will dominate the game. In that society, the person who thinks slowly becomes dangerous. They are not easily led, do not quickly believe, are not swept up by the crowd. And precisely because of that, they are pushed to the margins. This era does not need philosophers, but people with strong opinions. No need for questions, only reactions. No need for understanding, only shares. But Socrates once taught, the unexamined life is not worth living. If he lived today, perhaps he would have his account locked after his first few comments. Because in our world, doubt is a sin, while certainty is the new faith. We are intoxicated by the illusion that we are awakening, while in reality just dreaming amidst a blind crowd. Wisdom is no longer measured by the ability to comprehend, but by the ability to convince. And truth? Truth is now just the loser in the race for speed. The world manipulated by emotion and silence. There is a silent power that Socrates never saw, the power of artificial emotion. It needs no army, needs no violence, just a touch of a hand. A piece of news is released like a drop of ink in water, slowly spreading, swirling, dyeing the entire ocean of perception. The modern world is not controlled by guns, but by the share button. No one orders us to be outraged. We voluntarily get angry, voluntarily share, voluntarily become tools for a machine that makes money from our own anger. Media, social networks, the platforms, all have clearly understood human instinct. We will stop at the place that makes our hearts beat faster. Not at the truth, but at the stimulation. Not at knowledge, but at rationalized anger. A false story, a distorted headline, an edited clip. If strong enough to evoke emotion, it will spread like fire meeting wind. The truth might be announced after that a few days, a few weeks, but by then, no one cares anymore. In the world of speed, accuracy always arrives late. Socrates once said that the wise person knows to control emotions before speaking, while the fool speaks before understanding. But today, the system encourages us to do the opposite. Speak first, feel later. Understanding is not needed.
The faster one reacts, the more one is praised as honest, sincere, living truthfully. But the truth does not lie in the anger. It lies in the silence after the anger, where we ask ourselves, why did I react like that? When emotion is turned into a tool, humans become slaves to their own hearts. The digital machine does not need to lie to us. It just needs to make us angry. Because when we are angry, we don't need evidence. We need someone to blame. And in that moment, reason dies within us, without us even realizing it. There is a kind of silence, spreading like fog. Not the silence of the ignorant, but the silence of the one who knows too well. A teacher sees their student believing in something wrong, but dares not speak. A scientist hesitates before the public for fear of being edited, of being smeared. An employee in a company knows clearly the absurdity, but keeps silent to keep the job. A father, a mother, dares not tell their child, "You are wrong," for fear of being seen as outdated, conservative. That silence is not born from ignorance, but from the fear of being crushed by the crowd. In this era, the price of speaking the truth is higher than ever. A wrong opinion can make us famous, but a hard-to-hear truth can get us erased. Therefore, people learn how to survive by pretending to agree. A psychological phenomenon creeps everywhere: pluralistic ignorance, collective ignorance. Everyone disagrees internally, but thinks they are the only one who thinks differently. So everyone stays silent. And that silence, over time, turns into a false consensus. Those with knowledge, those who know how to see both sides, become dangerous people. They speak in the language of complexity, a language that modern society no longer has the patience to hear. People no longer ask, "What do you think?" but ask, "Which side are you on?" No one wants to understand anymore, only to choose sides. In that two-color world, subtlety becomes a sin. If you say, "Things are more complicated than we think," they will assume you are evading. If you say, "I am not sure," they will assume you are weak. If you say, "I need time to understand," they will conclude that you are stupid. And so people stop thinking. We choose simple answers because they help us feel we belong to a group, a herd, a crowd. But truth is never simple. This world is woven from 1,000 threads of contradiction, and only those who dare to stay in the contradiction will find wisdom. There is a tragic paradox. The most knowledgeable people are often the ones who speak the least. They understand that the world is not black and white,
that truth is not complete in any single statement. But society today does not forgive hesitation. It wants a definitive answer, wants certain belief, wants someone to shout, "I am right," so we can feel secure in picking a side. The person who knows how to listen is no longer respected. The cautious person is no longer trusted. And the honest person is seen as weak. Socrates, if he were alive, would probably see himself put on trial a second time. Not by poison, but by algorithms and the outraged mob. Not the court of Athens, but social media. No need for guards, because everyone has now become the monitor of others. When truth becomes a sin, morality also becomes distorted. People start to confuse kindness with silence. They call silence respect, call blindness solidarity. But silence is not morality. It is just comfort disguised as kindness. And in that context appears a new phenomenon, moral emotionalism. People don't need to live well, just need to show kindness. No need to act, just need to be angry at the right time. An outraged tweet, a prayer emoji, a video sharing social consciousness, that is enough to feel one has contributed to the world. Socrates once believed that virtue must be proven by action, by choice, by life.
But society today turns virtue into a symbol, a form of personal brand. People build a good image the way a company builds a logo. Morality becomes something to perform, no longer a guide for action. And when morality is commercialized, the bad also learns how to pretend to be good. We see the rich preaching about altruism, the powerful talking about humility, and even those who refuse to understand anyone calling for tolerance. Goodness, when performed, loses its redemptive power. The world is gradually dividing into two types of people: those who scream to prove that they exist, and those who are silent, knowing that existence does not need to be proven. But silence forever cannot save the world. When the knowledgeable do not speak up, the dangerous will speak up for them. When the rational retreat, anger becomes the official language. At that point, society no longer debates to find truth, but to see who is the one who speaks louder. No longer learning, but only smashing each other with words. That is the real tragedy of the era. We no longer dialogue, but only wage war with voices. And in that war, no one wins. Only truth is the first one killed. Socrates once said, "The only good is knowledge, and the only evil is ignorance." If that is true, then we are living in an era where evil is applauded and cheered. Not because people want bad things, but because they no longer recognize it. When emotion is manipulated, when truth is distorted, when the wise are forced to be silent, society doesn't need more sins, it just needs more apathy. And that very apathy is the sign of decline. A civilization does not collapse because of foreign invasion, but because its interior is eroded by a weariness with truth.
The salvation of wisdom. There is a silent paradox in every era. When humans lose faith in wisdom, they do not return to instinct, they return to the noise. When truth is no longer sacred, everything else will take its place. Emotion, fame, money, power, and worst of all, false certainty. But Socrates already saw this from more than 2,000 years ago. He said, "The easiest and noblest way is not to defeat others, but to improve oneself." And in a world where everyone wants to speak, then self-improvement is precisely the highest form of speech. We have seen what happens when wisdom is replaced by performance, when emotion is turned into a tool, when the silence of the knowledgeable allows the noise of the confident to overwhelm, and when morality is turned into an advertising product.
The remaining question is, what can we do? Not macro solutions, not a knowledge revolution, but the small acts of individual resistance, the kind that only one person can do, but if enough people do it together, can turn around an entire civilization. Salvation, if it exists, will not come from governments, religions, or technology. It comes from each individual refusing to become an extension of the noise, from each person daring to stop for a moment, think, and choose to step slower than the crowd. Let's start with what seems trivial: intellectual humility, daring to say, "I do not know." A simple sentence, but in the era of the inflated ego, it is a revolutionary act. When you admit that you do not know, you open the door for real knowledge to enter. Socrates once called that the wisdom of one who knows he is ignorant. Today, we can call that the wisdom of authenticity. We are used to always having opinions about everything, from economics to philosophy, from politics to personal morality. There is no space for silence.
But sometimes, thoughtful silence is stronger than 1,000 unthinking voices. In a world full of information, wisdom begins with moderation, selecting what to absorb, what to let fall away. Not everything that evokes emotion is trustworthy, and not everything that makes us uncomfortable is wrong. Intellectual humility is not self-deprecation, but recognizing that real knowledge is always infinite, while human life is finite. Next is good faith dialogue, an art that has been forgotten. Socrates used to wander through the squares of Athens, not to preach, but to ask. He asked shoemakers about justice, asked generals about courage, asked poets about beauty. And every question was a light tap on the wall of self-satisfaction of the interlocutor. Today, we can also do that, not in the square, but in the digital space, where questions have turned into accusations and conversations turned into battlefields. Good faith dialogue means listening to understand, not listening to respond. It requires us to step out of the ego. Ask the question, what if this person is partially right? That is not weakness, but a sign of a strong mind, because only a strong mind dares to let others touch its beliefs without collapsing. In a polarized world, good faith dialogue is an act of courage. It does not attract views, does not generate applause, but it nurtures what every surviving civilization needs: faith in the ability to understand each other. Then comes the information diet, the thing that determines the health of the mind. We are often careful choosing food for the body, but let the mind consume whatever is served up online. Just like fast food, fast information makes us full instantly, but empty long-term. The feeling of knowing is not synonymous with understanding. Learn to hunger for knowledge the right way, which is knowing when to stop swallowing and start digesting. Follow people who make you think differently, not just those who make you feel right. If all sources of information satisfy you, then you are not learning, you are being lulled to sleep. Real knowledge does not caress, it challenges. It does not make you feel safe, but makes you feel small. And precisely in the moment of seeing oneself as small, wisdom begins to take root. Another act of resistance, rewarding complexity. In the era of the short sentence, the person who speaks long sentences is the brave one. In the age of certainty, the person who dares to say, "I am still thinking," is the resilient one. Because society today wants us to choose sides, wants us to conclude, and never wants us to pause to understand that everything has another side. Rewarding complexity means
when someone dares to admit they do not have the perfect answer, listen to them more. When someone says a problem is harder than we think, don't see it as evasion, but as a sign of wisdom. Truth is never simple, and if you meet someone with simple answers for all complex problems, then either they are a genius or they're lying. In most cases, it is the second thing. And finally, accept uncertainty as a way of life. We fear ambiguity because it makes us feel small. Fear doubt because it makes us feel we lose our footing. But doubt is the sign of wisdom in operation. Without doubt, there is no evolution. Without insecurity, there is no truth discovered. Socrates never gave answers, he only left questions. He believed that true wisdom is not having all the answers, but knowing how to ask the right questions. When society demands we know everything, be brave and say we're learning. When they want us to choose sides, choose truth, even if it is lonely. When they want us to be outraged, choose silence to understand before reacting. That is not passivity.
that is the highest form of intellectual resistance. Socrates was once sentenced to death for corrupting the youth and disrespecting the gods. In reality, his only crime was teaching people to think. Athens killed him, but could not kill what he sowed, because true wisdom, once sown, cannot be destroyed. It only sleeps, waiting for someone who dares to awaken. And perhaps it is you, the one reading these lines, is the one that wisdom is waiting for. No need to become a philosopher, just need to refuse to become a noisy person. No need to be great, just need to be honest with the truth you see. No need to save the whole world, just need to keep yourself from being swallowed by the noise of it. One day, when people ask, "Why did this world collapse?" the answer might be, because humans stopped thinking. But if they ask, "What saved the world?" maybe the answer will be different, because there were still people who dared to be silent, to ponder and speak the truth, despite knowing they would be forgotten. When ancient Athens chose to kill Socrates, they thought they had extinguished the flame, but that flame only moved places, from speech to consciousness, from the person to the era. And now it is lying in your hands. No need to shout slogans, no need to make a revolution, just need to live differently.
Think one beat slower. Speak one word less. Listen one idea more carefully. And always ask yourself, is what I believe really true? That is precisely how we resist the age of self-satisfied ignorance. That is the purest political, moral, and philosophical act. Because a society cannot change if the individuals within it refuse to think differently. And as Socrates once said, no one can teach you anything. They can only help you remember what you already knew. Perhaps you don't need anyone to lead the way at all. You just need to stop. Listen to the voice in your own mind and let wisdom awaken once more.